destructor we had discussed, right? Now,
Yes.
one example also I gave. Uh, Only I think slides we didn't go through the slide. So quickly we'll go through the slide, but I hope you know about destructor, right? No? Is destructor also a special method of your class? Destructor is a special method of the class like constructor, okay, and it is called when the object is destroyed. Like constructor is called when immediately after the object is created. When the object is created, immediately after that, who is called constructor. The same way when the object is destroyed, now you destroy it by using del, or when the scope is over, whenever the object scope is over, that time also the objects are destroyed. So when the object is destroyed, immediately what is called destructor. Get it? Now actually there is no need to write explicitly destructor in Python. They are seldom defined. Many times we don't define it. But still Python has given provision of defining your own destructor. And as it's a special method, so obviously it is going to be a magic method. And magic method means it's going to be a dunder method. And destructor dunder method is double underscore del double underscore. Getting? Double underscore del and double underscore. Example I gave you yesterday, right? So special method of class, destructor is also a special method of class like constructor, and like constructor it is called implicitly. Same way destructor is also called implicitly, but when opposite, like constructor is called immediately after object is created, so destructor is called when the object is destroyed. Getting? See, not much needed in Python. As I said, no, they are seldom defined because Python is having automatic garbage collection. Same like Java, but not like C++. In C++, garbage collection doesn't take automatic. You have to explicitly release the memory. Otherwise, there will be memory leaks. Memory leak problem is always there in C++. Such issues never come in Python, Java and all. Okay, so not much needed in Python. Why? As like in C++, because Python is having its automatic garbage collector. So whenever any object goes out of scope, or when you are destroying any object, so automatically it will be put into a free list, right? So Python is having a garbage collector that handles memory management. But still, if you want to define your own destructor, you can by writing your own magic method, that is double underscore del double underscore. So identified by special magic method, this thing like init, the opposite of that is del, and called when. So when all the references to the object are deleted, right? And when the references to the object are gone, when you explicitly delete it by del statement, del and a object, yesterday I showed you, that is when an object is garbage collected. Now situations I told you, when it goes out of scope or when you explicitly delete it by del statement, then obviously what is called destructor. Syntax C, def double underscore del double underscore, and you have to pass self. Self is still needed for del. You understanding? For del, self is needed. Why? Because it is also called for some object. It's called for some object, and that's the reason self is passed. Means destructor is also associated with some object. Okay. Situations I have given. See, a reference to object is deleted when the object goes out of scope, means when the scope of the object is complete. Like you have created an object within a function. Object is created inside a function. So when the function is over, so is the scope of that object over? Because when you create an object within the function, when you create object inside function, is it going to be a local object? Yes. And the scope of local object is restricted till that function. So when the function is over, that local object is also destroyed. So its destructor is called. Or when your program ends, or when you delete the object explicitly by del statement, then destructor called. Okay. Yesterday I gave you this example, I guess. Right or no? Correct. So class, test, constructor, destructor. Now just an information I wanted to tell you, that we people call this init only as a constructor. We are calling double underscore init double underscore as a constructor. But in reality, this is actually not a true constructor. This is actually just an initializer. Its job is just to add properties in the object. Then you'll say, who is actually then the constructor? The constructor is double underscore new double underscore, whose job is to allocate memory for your object. You understanding or no? Means in reality, the constructor is this one. When I write class test, def double underscore new double underscore, okay? Normally universally accepted parameter for constructor is CLS, in which the reference of that class comes, class namespace. Okay? Because its job is first to allocate memory for your object. You understanding? And this thing is actually your initializer. You understanding? Clear? Okay. So now if I create an object of test class t equal to test, so in reality it is giving call to this constructor, whose job is to allocate memory for that object, and then to give some initial value to that object we call initializer. You understanding? Clear? Now you may say, like, if I have written both, so what is called? That new only is called, not init. Init you have to explicitly call inside. Inside that you have to give a call to init. Clear? This also again one very good book I was reading that time, because this also opened some door of my knowledge again. Okay? Because till now me also was thinking that init is just a constructor. In reality, init is not a constructor, new is a constructor. You understanding? New's job is to do the allocation of memory to the object, and init's job is to give the initial properties to that object. When init says that object is already created, I am just going to add properties in that object. So adding properties in that object is init work, and actually allocating memory to your object is new work. Getting? And which is automatic added in every class. In every class that new will be added. Clear? So normally we just write init, and this problem is what maximum books don't mention only about that. In maximum book they call init only as a constructor. You Google it, you search it in many books. They just mention about init only, and they call init only as a constructor. But in reality, init is just an initializer. Its job is to allocate memory or just to add properties in that allocated object. Means object memory is already allocated. Only adding properties in that object is the job of init. So see, I wrote class test, I have written init. Now t equal to test when I wrote, so is it first implicitly going to call that new, which is automatic added in your class? Now you haven't written. So is interpreter adding one hidden new method in your class? Means is one automatic this method also added in your class? Yes or no, guys? Whose job is to do allocation and then call init. So that will be called, and after that what is called? Init is called. You're getting? But suppose both you have defined, right? So then in that case, to whom it will call? Init or new? I'll give you later one proper demonstration and I'll clarify you. Okay? Which one it will call? Init or new?
New.
New. Clear?
New.
It will call new first. Right? And suppose you people have given call to init, so it will give call to init. Otherwise, it won't call init. It will only call new. Getting? But now when you don't define this new in your class and you're just defining init, then also what is called?
Implicitly new.
Yes, very good, very good. Means you're hearing me carefully. Very good. And your OP clear concepts are clear. So first it will give call to that implicit new, which was hidden added. Automatically interpreter has added one new, that, and that new is going to give call to init. So we people see only the init functioning. So we feel direct init is called. No, always first what is called? New, and then init is called.
Sir,
Correct?
a demo, small demo for this.
Yes, I'll sure give you. Don't worry. Clear? I'll justify and show you. I'll give you the justification that never what is called. Clear? I'll come to it, but first we'll cover with this slide part.
So why they kept two things separately?
They are saying what?
Creation,
Allocation.
initialization.
Yes, you only told. See, now you only have clarified. New job is to allocate the memory and return the reference of that object. Means the object allocation is done and then the reference of that object is returned by new. And init is to give the properties in that already created object. When init is called, it is assumed that the object is already created. Only adding properties in that object is the job of init. Means job of init is not to do allocation. When init is called, it is assumed what is already created.
Object.
Object is already created. Only adding properties in that object is the job of init. And that's the reason they have given two different names. Init, initialization, and new means allocating memory.
Okay.
You're getting? And when new is called in context of class, not in context of self. Means new when is called, it is called in context of test, not in context of that object. Why? Because when new is called, only the object is created, no? Memory is allocated. Getting? The allocation of memory is done in context of test, and giving initial values to that object will be done in context of that object for whom the memory is allocated. Getting? See, pictorially I'll try to tell you. This is your test class, correct? And in that test, both are there. One is init also and one new also. Getting? Now when the memory allocation only is to be done, memory allocation only is not yet done. So that allocation of memory is done by which function? New. So to invoke new, who will be associated? This test class. Why? Because yet object is only not made. No? So new will be called in context of class. And after the object is created, giving properties to it will be done in context of object. Whichever object is created, T1, T2. So now that object got created, its reference is kept in T1. Another object is created, its reference is kept in T2. So now to add properties in this, clear? Who will do the property, adding property in it? Init. But init will be called in context of
Object.
Respective object. You got it? So init will be called in context of T1. Init will be called in context of T2. Why? Because then only it will add properties in that respective object.
Right.
Clear? Okay. but allocation of that memory is to be done first. So for
Right.
allocation purpose, there is one method called new, which will be called in context of class. So in this case, can I say new is a class method and init is a instance method? Can we say init is an instance method and new is a class method?
Yes, sir.
Clear?
Yes, sir.
So init, to invoke init, you need to have an object associated with it, whose reference will be implicitly passed in self. You understanding? And
Yes.
when new is called, the new is called in context of test, means that class. So that class reference go in that CLS. Getting? So whenever
Yes.
you call like this, x dot f, x means class name dot f. So that class name reference also go, because that class is also having its own namespace. Getting? Means
Yeah.
class namespace is also there and object namespace is also there. So when you want to call a method in a class namespace, you have to call it via class name. And when you want to call the methods which are associated with the object, then you have to call it along with the object. Object dot method. Object dot method. Clear?
Okay. Yes.
So always remember. So till now we were not writing new, we were writing only init, because new is getting implicit. No? As I said, no, like garbage collection and allocation is automatic. Automatic allocation and automatic deallocation. So therefore we don't have to explicitly write new. But if you want, you can define it. Getting? If you want, you can define that new also. So please make it clear. That is the rule of Python. But as I said, the maximum books don't mention only about what? New. They don't tell only anything about new. Because they say that when you write t1 equal to class name round bracket, automatic object is created. But actually here, two methods are called. First, which method will be called, which is in context of, yes guys, when I write test round bracket, the two methods are called one after another.
Class.
New then init.
New and then init, right? But new will be called in context of class, and init will be called in context of that respective object, whose reference that new has returned. New has allocated memory, and that newly allocated memory reference come in t1, and then in context of t1 then init is called, because init job is to give the initial properties to the created object. Getting? And that object creation only is done by new. Okay, but many times new is called, it is defined implicitly, called implicitly. Okay, but suppose if you define new and init, so will new automatically call init, or we have to explicitly call? If you are defining new also and init also, you have defined new also and init also, so will that new give call to init, or we have to write code to give call to init? You have to explicitly call. I'll prove it. I'll give you a simple example. Clear? So t1 equal to test, constructor called. Del t1, when I delete that object, destructor called. Suppose I'm defining a function, def f. Within that function, I'm creating an object. So when I'm creating an object inside function, so is this object going to have scope only till that function? Yes. But now I have just defined function. First I have to call it. See here, I am giving call to f. But when f is called, it will come here. It will create one test object. Clear? F function is called. It will come here. It will create a test object. When test object is created, it will give call to init. I am in constructor. Now the function is over. So when function is over, so will it call destructor for t? Yes or no, guys? Is the scope of t getting over? Function called, this object got created, constructor called, I am in constructor, function over. So when the function is over, so is the destructor for t called?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
the scope is over, no? The scope of that function is over, so it will give call to destructor of t, and therefore it will give call to del. Is it giving call to del? I am in destructor. Yes. ठीक है, तो hope it is clear to you about that. Yesterday one example also I had taken. I'll just tell you about it. See here, this example only, and I had asked you the whole sequence, the sequence in which it will call constructor and destructor. Okay, one more example about new I'll try to show you. All these are very basics. See, class test, and I'm defining new. Clear? See here, new arguments are always CLS. If I write self over there, it's not going to make any difference. Will it make any difference if I write self? Why? Because that CLS is just a universally accepted name. You understanding or no? Is this CLS a keyword like self? What do you say, guys? If I write instead of CLS and self, if I write only X, will it make any problem? No. This is just a name of a parameter. Getting? Python community has accepted that word called CLS. Just to recognize that in this CLS, what is coming? Individual object reference is coming, या class namespace is coming. Is class namespace also going to have some memory? Huh. So that class namespace is also having memory, so its reference will come. In short, class context will come. And when we write self, the individual object context will come. But instead of CLS, if I write self, still in that what is going to come? Object reference or class namespace only will come. Class context or object context will come. Is the name of parameter going to make any difference? Only they are saying it is an universally accepted name to differentiate. Getting? If any method is having parameter self, so we recognize that it is a which method? Class method or object method? Yes, guys, I'm asking you. Like data, we have two types of data: instance data and which data? We have instance data and we have class data. So same way methods also are two type: class method, instance method. When the method is called in context of a object, money dot, kitty dot, clear? If it's called in that object context, so you should recognize that that method is a which method? Instance method or class method?
Instance.
Means if I write like this, cat dot f, and if I write object dot f, so we differentiate it. When it is getting called in context of a class, it is a class method, and if it is getting accessed in context of an object, so it is instance method. Right? Okay. So just for our convenience, we are giving parameter names self and CLS. But here if I write self, it's not at all going to complain. Only the name you have changed. Anyway, what is going to come in it? Though here also I wrote self, but anyway, is the reference of individual object going to come, or that class namespace reference?
Class namespace.
Clear? Only for our convenience we are giving for clarity. Getting? Now here I'm writing one statement like this: print, okay, and I am in new, suppose, and def underscore underscore init and here I am writing print I am in init. That's all. And then we'll create an object of this. Okay? And we will run the code. See, has it only printed I am in new? It has not printed I am in init. Got it or no? Did it print I am in init? No, because you have defined both. Then first actually it is going to call only what? Test round bracket. When I say internally, is it going to call test dot underscore underscore new?
Yes, sir.
Clear? Means actually that in CLS, what will go? The reference of this class only. Because class is also one namespace. Means class will also have its own namespace. So that will go. Getting? And is it going to return the reference of that newly born object? Because is this new going to allocate memory for that new object? A new object is going to get created, and the reference of that newly created object is returned, which we collect in T. You understanding? So now if you want further the initialization also to be done, then you have to explicitly give call to init as well. You understanding? Unless and until you give call to init, it won't call init method. So CLS dot init. Clear? Okay. So I hope you are understanding it. So if you write self, just one, we didn't pass self to it. No, but self, one minute.
Can we remove self from init definition?
No, but for init you have to write. Getting? I'll tell you. Now what I'll do is here only I'll give self. Is that name only same I'm keeping. Newly allocated memory. One minute, huh? You have to call it in context of. Getting? As it is a this one init, getting? It is to be called in context of that class, because new is here. I'll just write CLS only. CLS only. Okay, doesn't make difference. Self and CLS, anything you write. Why? Because it is just representing that it is called in that class context. Getting? So new will give call to init, right? And then that newly created object, its reference is CLS, which will come in that self. So here you write self, doesn't make difference. Instead of CLS, if you write self, will also won't make any difference. Okay. So now explicitly what is done, you are creating an object, new is called, and in new you are giving call to init. Getting? And to that init we are passing what? The reference of that CLS. Right? So I hope it is clear. So in short, what we have to do is, and when I call any method like this, test dot, so you should remember that it is getting called in context of what? It's getting called in context of that class. And when we write object dot something, so it is getting called in context of that particular object, right? Okay. So when we say new round bracket, so default always what is called? Default always new is called. You understanding? And now that CLS will contain the reference of that newly created, and then we are giving call to init. And when I give call to init, that time it will do the initialization to that object, whatever that newly created object is. You understanding, no? And when I don't do this thing, so by default, is it going to call implicit new? Is it going to give call to implicit new? Means is one new automatically added in your
Yes.
class, right? Okay. So automatic one new is sure going to get added in your class, and that new will get automatic first called, and then that new will give call to init, which does the initialization. You do some initialization also over here. You understanding, no? Correct? So this way you have to do the work. So only just remember to maximum time in maximum books, or even if you Google, to many places, nowhere the mention of new is there. They directly say init is only the constructor, but reality init is only doing initialization, adding data in the properties, adding properties in the object. But bringing that object in the existence is the job of new. Getting? But then why we don't write new? Because allocation is also happening automatic. Python does the work of allocation and deallocation implicitly. So as allocation, deallocation is implicit, therefore rarely will need to write which functions? Destructor and constructor. But which function we have to write? Constructor and destructor, both if you don't write then also okay. But which function we have to write?
Constructor.
Constructor or initializer. Till yesterday we were calling this only as
Constructor.
but real Python theory says, Python literature says this is not the constructor, this is actually
Initializer.
and this is actually
Default constructor.
constructor. This is actually constructor, whose job is to do the allocation of memory. Getting? So maximum time allocation of memory is anyway going to happen automatic. So no need. But still, if you want to explicitly define, you can. Getting? So always remember, whenever the object is created, so the constructor is called. So actually, who is called? Init or new is called? New. And then inside new, then init is given call. Because init's job is just to add properties in the created object. Okay.
So can we say that we have overridden the new?
Yes, 100% we have overridden. Yes, you should say that only. We have overridden what? New. Getting?
Okay.
We have overridden because actually that new is automatically added, no? And it's going to give call to new of the parent also, correct? That is test class. So we have defined means obviously we have overridden, right? ठीक है. Now,
Sir, firstly that CLS that we passed, it contains the reference of that our class namespace, and after that when object is created, then its reference it contains that we pass to
yes,
init.
yes. Right. Actually, what happens is it is getting called in context of test, and whatever that newly allocated memory is there, no, its reference come in CLS.
Okay, sir.
And that is only coming in self, no, later. See, when I called init, so test.init CLS, so that self will contain that only. Getting?
Yes.
Now coming to some built-in functions. Now few built-in functions we studied in chapter 3, right? Many we studied: hex, oct, bin, then help, then divmod, exp, few built-in, and then few we had already studied like print, input, yes or no, map, then filter, type, id, lot of built-in functions. So there are some built-in functions associated with object-oriented programming also. Correct? So that few built-in functions which are associated with OP, that we'll discuss. First in that is getAttr. They are also called as introspection functions. Those who know in Java, like in Java, there is a concept called reflection. Like in PHP, they call it as introspection. Or in C++, they are called as RTI, RTTI, real-time type info. You can get it. Same, they are like a debugging functions. These functions are like a debug functions. They helping functions. So getAttr, and you give the object and the property name of the property means attribute, and then the object. So this function will return you the value of that property, of that object. Whatever object you have given, that object's this property's value will be returned. And suppose if that object is not having this property, it will show an error, attribute error. That object is not having so and so property. So if you don't want that error, then you can give some default value. Then this default value is returned in absence of this property. Hear carefully. In absence of this property in that object, it won't give error. It will return this default value if you have given default value. Getting clear? See here, I'll just show you an example. We'll create one class test, right? And then I'll add one constructor in it, which we have been calling till now as constructor. So, okay, we'll keep this definition as constructor only. Self.x equal to x, self.y equal to y. I'm adding two properties in it. Okay, see here, I'm creating one object and I'm passing two arguments to it. Test 10, 20. Getting? So you know internally it's going to call like this: test dot double underscore init t, 10, 20. Is it something like this going to happen? Test dot init t, 10, 20 means that object which is created, its reference is in t, and this two value. Now t will come in self, 10 will come in x, 20. So who is self? T only. So will it add xy in self means t only? Xy will be added in whom? T, and it will give value 10, 20. But internally remember, before calling this init, it has already called new for doing the allocation of memory to that object. Okay? Now we are just checking, and checking means we are getting the attribute value t, and here I am giving y. Okay, so will it return the value of property y of object t? Object t is y property. So what is the value of y property? 20 now. When you created an object t equal to new test, so did it create one object? Correct. Its reference is with t1. Then in context of t1, init is called, which will add one property x to this object. It will add one property y to this object, and it will initialize it with 10. It will initialize it with 20. Yes or no? And now I am saying getAttr t, y. So is this object t1 t? Is it having one y property? Yes. So its value is 20. So it will return that 20. Getting? See. But suppose if I give any attribute t comma z, is z attribute present in t object? No. Yes or no, guys? All of you are hearing, I hope. Right or no? Sure?
Yes, sir.
Right? Sneha, Sakshi and all, Swarna,
Yes, sir.
Vrushali.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sanket. ठीक है? Coming back. Now, T is not having Z property. So obviously it will give an error. Attribute error. Test object has no attribute Z. This type of error yesterday also we have seen. So suppose you don't want such error to come, then you can give some default. Getting? Like I am giving not found, a default value. Any value you can give, but as a default. So now if I run, will it throw that exception or it will return the default value?
Default value.
See. So it is returning the default value. Then there is one more method, that 3-4 methods are there. So returns, not method, built-in function. Returns value of attribute name of object obj. So whatever object you pass, that object's this property value is returned. And if that property is absent, it will throw attribute error. Okay, and if you have given default value, then it will return you the default value. In absence, default value is used only when the object doesn't have that property. Then next is has attr. This will just check whether that object is having that property or not. Okay, it will just check whether that object is having has attr t comma y. Print has attr t comma z. So in the first context it will give true, but in the second context it will give false, because that object t is not having property z. Therefore see, one time you got true, another time you got false. Right? See, checks whether object obj has attribute name. Okay, then we have set attr. What will set attr do? So it will change the value of the property name of obj to this new value. Okay, so in that obj, if there is already a property name, then its old value is replaced with this new. But now you'll say, like, if that object doesn't have that property, then it will add that new property with this value. Getting? In short, it is just manipulating the dictionary. Yes or no, guys? Is every object internally having its own dictionary? And actually in that dictionary only these keys are getting added and removed. Everything is played on that dictionary. Right? So what it does, in short, it goes and check in the dictionary of that object that whether this property is there or no. Yes, so its value is just updated to this new value. That property value is replaced with new. But if this property is not there, will it add this new key value pair in that object? Yes. Clear? Okay? I hope you are understanding. Right or no? All of you. I'll just quickly give you one example. In this only I'll show you. Like I'm writing set attr, then object t x, it's already 10, so I'll make it 100, and set attr t z 30. Okay? And now if I check whether t is having z or no, or I'm trying to print value of z, so will it print not found or will it print that new value 30? Clear? See here. So initially that T object was having only X and Y property. So you checked whether Y is there or no. You found out the value of Y. So that was 20, it returned. Z property was not there. So it gave this default value, not found. You are checking whether X is there or no. Yes, so true. But Z is not there, false. Now you are setting value of X property to 100. So is X already there? Yes. So its old value 10 is changed to 100. But is Z there? No. So will it add Z in T? Will it add Z in T? Yes, with value 30. Yes or no, guys? And therefore when I check whether T is having Z or no, so now it gives true. Can you see? Here it gives now true. And we are accessing the value of Z of T. So now will it give not found or will it give that 30? It gives 30. Right? Clear to you or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes, sir.
set ATTR replaces the value of property name of object obj. Property name of object obj value is changed to this new value. And if that obj doesn't have property name, then that name property is added with value. Getting whatever value you give. So set value of attribute name of object obj to value. Property name of object obj value is changed to this new value. Okay. And last is del ATTR. This is to delete attribute, which you can do it by del statement also, right? But for that they have given built-in function as well. See here, if I'm writing del ATTR T and now I'm deleting Y, okay, and I'm trying to access value of it, or has ATTR I'm writing T comma Y. Will it give false over here now? Because you have already deleted Y and you are checking whether T object is having Y or no. So Y is not there, therefore it gives false. Does it give false? Clear? I hope you got it. See, delete attribute name of object obj. Just a simple example, the same example. First I have created one class test. This is the constructor which is adding two properties in your object. Clear? X property and Y property. In which object? For whom the constructor is called. See here. Now you are creating an object of test class. Will it give call to constructor? After the object is created, constructor is called. Is that constructor going to add two properties in that T1 object? So now T1x, T1y is 10 and 20. Do you agree with this till here? Yes or no? Is T1x 10
Yes.
and T1y 20? Okay, so T1x is 10 and T1y is 20. Now I am trying to print value of T1x. Get ATTR T1x. So is T1 having x property? Yes, and its value is 10. So will it return 10? Okay. I am writing get ATTR T1z. Is T1 having z property?
No.
No. So it gives an error, attribute error, test object has no attribute z. Okay. So why? Because you have not given default value. You didn't give default value. That's the reason it has thrown exception. We can trap these errors, which we'll be learning now in the next chapter. Next chapter is for that only, exception handling. Okay. So you can trap it. But here I have given some default value. What is the default value? Absent. So now, is T1 having Z attribute? No. So is it throwing exception or is it returning the default value? It is returning default value, that is absent. Okay. Then coming to has ATTR. T1x. So is T1 having X attribute? Yes, therefore true. But is T1 having Z attribute? No, therefore false. Okay? Now suppose you're first printing x and y of that T1 object, T1x, T1y. So when we created object, so through the constructor it is initialized to 1020. Okay, so 1020 printed. Now through set attr, I am changing the value of x property of T1 object to 15. X property of T1 object is changed to 15. So previously it is 10, now it is becoming 15. You're printing and seeing it, T1x, T1y. So when you're printing, now x value is changed to 15, therefore here you are able to see 15, 20. Now you are writing set attr T1 Z 100. So was there Z in T1? No. So will it add it as a new attribute?
Yes.
With value 100. And therefore when you're printing all the three properties, x property, y property, z property, is it printing 50, 20, 100? 15, 20 and 100. As your 100 is printed, this proves that set attr has added this new property. It has added this new property z in T1 with value 100. Okay, right? Again I am printing it. Del attr T1z, z attribute deleted. So now when you are trying to print all three, it will give error for z. Test object has no attribute z. Okay? Right? All of you? I hope till here it is clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now moving to the next topic, one more. Now built-in class attributes, which I've told you many times, like whenever you create a class, some automatic properties are added in your class namespace. Like if I've created a class test, getting? So in this class namespace, actually what are stored in class namespace? All the functions, methods. Because I told you, na, methods are not duplicated. Like if you create 100 objects, for all 100 object, only what is duplicated? Instance data. Right? Functions exist only once. Functions means methods. Exist only once in whose namespace? That class namespace. Getting? So in that class namespace only you might have created some class data also. So that is also created here. But along with that, some more properties are also added in your class namespace, implicitly, automatic. And those all are identified by double underscore in the beginning and in the end. From which one we have already seen, that is called as doc, which prints that documentation string. But other are also there, like double underscore dict, that is the dictionary in which all the properties are kept. All the names of the methods, because method is also object, na, according to Python. Python says everything is object. So it keeps all the details of your method and properties in that dictionary. Then many other, the name of your class also is kept in one property, that is double underscore name, then double underscore module, the name of the module in which this program is running. Okay, so all these properties are there which are identified by this too. But these are all class property. They get created in the class namespace. Okay, so what all those properties are? First is double underscore dict double underscore, in which it will store the list of all the members of that class. The data members, the methods, their whole list is kept in it. See, dictionary containing the class namespace means whatever is there in the class namespace, your methods, and then any data within the class namespace, as a key value pair it is kept. Getting? Okay. We will simultaneously print that too. It will be more clear to you people. Everything shown with an example makes it more clear. Right? No? Just showing it theoretically Suppose I'm creating class test and pass for time being, or I'll add some data in it. X equal to 10, Y equal to 20. Will it do? Are these class data? Will it be called as a class data? Instance data or class data? Yes, guys. Is this X equal to 10, Y equal to 20? Is it an instance data or class data?
Class data.
It is
Class
class
data.
data because from yesterday we are seeing whatever variables you define in the class body but outside the method, they are called as class data. Getting?
Yes.
Then I'm adding some methods also, like I'm adding init. For time being I'll keep empty, or I'll give some message like, okay, or some other simple method disp, but it is not which method. Like if I don't pass self, will it be called as a class method? When I don't pass self, it is treated as a class method. I am in disp. Means to invoke this disp, getting? If you want to invoke this disp, you can directly invoke it by writing test dot disp. Test dot disp and not pass anything. And whenever self is passed, means you should know it. It is going to get invoked in context of an object. Okay. Okay, one simple class I have created. Now we will just try to print those. We'll even add one document string also. Right? This is test class. This is a documentation string. Print test dot double underscore dict. Okay? Which I showed you now. Double underscore dict. It is a class property. It is created, it is added automatic in your class namespace. We have not defined it, but it is put into that class namespace. Okay, see here. Is it showing everything which is there in the class namespace, like that double underscore dog, that main, then module value is main, doc value is that documentation string, x value is 10, y value, init value is the reference of that function, because you know the name of the function is also an object. Yes or no, guys? When I create one function foo, so is that foo also an object of class function? This I not have to tell you again and again. No? When I define one function foo, okay, for time being, so is that foo also an object of class function? See, when I write type foo, does it tell it's an object of class function? Right? So is the name of the function also an object according to Python? So what is kept in the name of a function? The reference of that function. Whatever is the address of that function, that is kept. See here, so that is only coming here. See, within the name, what is kept? The address of that function only is kept in the name of the function. Disp, then dictionary, correct? And all many other are there. Getting? They all are other members which are created in the class namespace. Okay? That as a dictionary it prints. Then double underscore doc. This will print only the documentation string which we have written here. See. Now in this whole program, if I write print test dot double underscore doc, will it print only the documentation string? Yes. This is test class. Was that your documentation string? So is it storing this doc string also in one property? And what is that property? Double underscore doc. Getting? See, class documentation string or none if undefined. If you have not given any documentation string, none will come. double underscore name double underscore. It will print the name of your class. Class name. Getting? Suppose I'm writing print test dot double underscore name double underscore. Will it print test only? The class name also is kept in that property. See, is it printing test only? So whatever is your name of class, that is also kept in one property called as double underscore name double underscore class name. Then the module name double underscore module double. So by default, what is the name of your module? Double underscore name double underscore. Getting? See here. Module name in which the class is defined. Getting? This attribute is double underscore main double underscore in interactive environment. Right? See, if I try to print test dot double underscore module double underscore. See, the default module name is double underscore main double underscore. That is your name of the module. Getting? Then double underscore basis double underscore. It will give you the list of all the parent classes. Getting? Means the name of all the parent classes. A possibly empty tuple containing the base classes in the order of their occurrences in the base class list. For example, if I take here, this is class test. Suppose I'm creating class A and I'm keeping it empty, and then class, no, I wanted to create A from test, suppose. Okay, so A's parent is test, right? Who is the parent class of test? A class. Or we'll do it other way, like some other example I'll give. I'll create one class A as empty. I'll create one class B as empty. And then I'll create test class from A and B class. Will it be called as a multiple inheritance? Multiple inheritance meaning when one child class is derived from more than one parent class. Test is a child class and A and B are both parent of it. Okay. And now if you are trying to print basis of test, so whoever are parent of that test class, they will get printed. See. So who are the parent of test class? Who are the parent of test class? A and B. And both belong to which module? Main module. Double underscore main double. In that module, who is present? A and B. You understanding or no? Clear? Okay. So as an example I have taken here. So are these basic class properties clear to you? Main property. These are all for debugging purpose. These all they have provided for as a debug tools. Getting? For printing all this information. Right? So class test, this is a documentation string. This is class property. This is one constructor. This is just one method. That's a class method. As self is not passed, so it will be called as a class method. Then everything you are trying to print. Suppose first you are trying to print double underscore dic double. So it is printing this whole dictionary in which all the things are there. Like your class data is there. Can you see that class data? Then that init method, then the display method. Okay. Then when you print double underscore doc, so it is printing your documentation string. When you're printing name, so it's printing the class name. Module, the name of the module. The default module name is double underscore main double. Basis. So as there was no parent, so who is the parent of test class? When any class is not having parent, So who is the parent of that class? Like in this program, if instead of printing test basis, I'm printing a basis, what it will print?
Object is parent.
Object.
Correct? Because A's parent is object class. Got it? Clear? So hope it is clear to you. Right or no? All of you?
So that all methods are dunder methods only.
Because they are implicit. No? Means instead of calling methods, you can say that they are hidden, meaning automatic created. We never access it explicitly. Many times explicitly we don't use it, but they have given that if you want to do some debugging, like if you want to print and see the class name or how many properties are there in that class, then you can access them. But normally explicitly we don't use it. Therefore you can call it as dunder only, because both sides there are double underscore.
Yes.
Now coming to the next important concept, that is inheritance. Now inheritance is also very important concept of object oriented programming. Can we say it is one of the important feature? Like OOP is having lot of features like class, object, encapsulation, abstraction, then polymorphism, getting inheritance. So inheritance is one of the important feature of object oriented programming language. What does inheritance mean? So it says it's a process of creating new classes from existing class. You understanding? Creating new class from existing class. So already there are some classes defined and kept. Already some classes are defined. Okay. They are already tested. They are already debugged. They are already error free. So those classes are already implemented. And from that class we are creating new classes. Okay. But then you'll say what the benefit that new class is going to get. The new class is going to incorporate everything of the existing class. Whatever that existing class is, it's all things are available to that new class. Correct? And that new class can add its own features also. Means it can do some add-on thing and it can use everything from the existing class from which it is inherited or from which it is being derived. Okay, or from which it is being created. Okay, so in simple terms, inheritance is the real life process only. From real life, it's a science word. In science also many times we have used word inherit. Inheriting means what? We are taking everything from our previous generation. Like from previous generation we get intelligence, from previous generation we get look. Yes or no? Many times it happens, like our previous generations are good in looking, then the next generation will also look good. If they have intelligence, that is sure going to flow in the next generation. It never happens that the next generation is dumb. Impossible. If the previous generations are intelligent, their next generations are sure intelligent. Clear? So the features are carry forward. The parent features are coming to the child. This is in science point of view. Normally, like parents create their properties, they create their shares, then lot of things they purchase. So that is automatic going to flow to whom? They have purchased a bungalow, flat and all. So that is automatic coming to whom? To the child, and child can do addition also in it. They can add extra features also. Like in programming, if someone has already created a class, okay, it is already implemented, tested, debugged, so we can use that class only and create a new class. That new class will incorporate all the things of that existing and add its own. It gives the benefit of reusability. Reusability you get. What reusability? Everything which is implemented already in the parent, that child can reuse. And it gives facility of extension. Extension meaning adding new features. Getting? Example, suppose someone has already developed a button class. Button. So button class is already developed, right? Okay, how the button will look, rectangular button, then its label, its width, its height, its position, its font, its color, everything. And then on the click of it, what should take place. So button class is already developed by someone. But I want a blinking button. Clear? So now tell me, is blinking button a button only? Originally it is a button. So it should have quality of a button, only the extra quality of blinking. It should have that extra ability of blinking, but originally it is also a type of button. So now tell me, when you want to make a blink button, shall we start from the scratch, from the zero, or can we take this existing button class and from that only create this new blink button and just add the extra facilities of blinking? And whatever the basic quality of button is there, that will be getting from the parent class only. So from parent class we'll get all the qualities of button, and in the child will add the extra qualities of blinking, so that the program development, software development process becomes faster, easier. You're not wasting again time in developing everything from the scratch, from zero. Can we do reusability? You got it or no? So someone has already developed one class queue. Now I just want a priority queue. So in case of priority queue, that extra facility of checking priority we want, but anyway it's a queue only. So why not to create priority queue from that queue? Got it or no? Clear? No need to waste time in developing that whole thing again from scratch. Okay, so what is inheritance? I hope you got it. Even inheritance gives facility of classifying a big class of objects, a general class of objects, into special categories also. Because of inheritance, what one more advantage you're going to get, that you can do specialization and generalization also. Like we have a general class, so from that you can create specific classes also. You understanding? Like this is class vehicle, getting? But this is a specific called as a two-wheeler. This is specific called three-wheeler. Okay, this is specific called four-wheeler. So now tell me, four-wheeler, three-wheeler and two-wheeler, they all are types of vehicles only. So they will have some commonality. They'll have some common characteristics that will be in vehicle, but only what is their speciality, that will be put in that child class. So child class will add its speciality, and whatever is the common thing which is needed for all, that will be in this parent. So is it giving facility of classifying a general class into specific class? Vehicle is a general class, and two-wheeler vehicle, three-wheeler vehicle, four-wheeler vehicle, are they specialization of that vehicle? Get it? So inheritance gives this facility also, right? Okay. Like animal anatomy, flowers anatomy, we have studied it in school days. Even into 11, 12, those who might have taken botany and all, they might be knowing. Okay, like a plant, all plants are classified, like Liliaceae, Apiaceae and all. No, like animals also categorized, no? Like herbivorous, carnivorous and omnivorous and all. So what is that? Classifications are done on what basis? That is all concept of inheritance. No? Correct. So in simple terms, what I want to say is inheritance is process of creating new class from existing class. Getting? The new class will incorporate or imbibe all the features of existing class, and will it add its own features also? Yes. Correct. So therefore it gives what benefit? Reusability, extension. Okay. Now we will quickly see how to create one class from another class. Okay, so Python rule is very simple. In Python, we just have to write class, child class, and bracket you have to give the name of parent class. Okay, if there is one parent, only that much. If more than one, so you have to give the list of that. Getting? Like look from mother, intelligence from father. Clear? Some moms will say no, no sir, not like that. Intelligence can come from mom also. So it was just an joke, not to take that serious. But as I said, more than one parent also child can come. Getting? So the features of one parent, second parent, all are coming in this child, and child is adding its own also. Getting? But very simple syntax. Like in Java, they use word extends in between. Child extends parent. C++ uses colon word like this, colon. Getting? So here it is just round bracket, that's all. Class child and bracket give the name of the parent and then the definition of the child class. Okay? So quickly we'll see what is inheritance, the mechanism of deriving new class from existing class. Process by which objects of one class acquire the properties of objects of another class. Getting? So there is already one class called vehicle and there is another class called four-wheeler. So four-wheeler is a vehicle only. So is that four-wheeler acquiring the properties of vehicle? So whatever properties of vehicle are there that are incorporated in four-wheeler, and only the speciality what is there of a four-wheeler that it will add of its own. Getting? The process by which one class object is incorporating the properties of another class. Right? Facility of reusability extension. That is the main benefit of inheritance. Reusability. Extension means adding new features. It also gives facility of classifying a big class of objects into their special category. Like suppose I am considering a general class called person. Getting? But in that person only there can be employees also and student also. Can I say? Student and employee. Both are types of what? Person. So both are sharing some quality of a person. But student is having some special feature. Employee is having some other feature. So they are add-on features, extra feature. So it gives facility of classifying a big class of objects into their subcategories. Getting? Now in general I am saying A is the existing class and from which what is created? A new class that is called as B class. So A is a parent class and B is a child class. Or you can call it as a base class, derived class, super class, subclass. Getting? Anything you can give. Arrow doesn't matter. Some books show arrow up and down. So down is there, so you have to read in that way. You can say the information of A is flowing. And up arrow means this is asking for the information. So anyway, you don't have to debate on the arrow. Getting? Because in some books you will see down arrow, some up arrow. Right? So this existing class A is called as a base or super or a parent class. Generally Java literature uses word super. C++ literature uses base. Clear? Or they use called as parent class. Python generally call it as parent and child. Subclass, derived class, child class, anything you can say. Now who is going to get all the features of A? B. So all the features of A are incorporated in B and B can add its own feature as well. Okay. Now just quick syntax I am telling you. See, class, child class, and in bracket you'll give the name of parent class. Parent class means super class. So if there is one super class, one. If there are more, write in comma. Whatever I write in square bracket indicates optional. So minimum one parent class has to be there. No? Otherwise then why we'll call it as inheritance? Isn't it? So is it clear to you, all of you? The basic syntax and all?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sure. No?
Yes, sir.
Then within 2 minutes, quickly we'll just go through the types of inheritance. Okay? Shall we? Yes, guys.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
The types of inheritance, in that the first one is single inheritance, where one child class is derived from one parent class. That simple rule. Single inheritance. There is one child class derived from one parent class. Okay? Then we have multiple inheritance. Multiple inheritance means when one child class is derived from more than one parent class. Means it is going to get features of all its parents. In short, like it is going to get feature of A also and B also, and it will add its own feature. Getting? There are many examples like this. In your normal computer also, you see many components which are derived in this way. Some languages don't give multiple inheritance, like Java. Java doesn't support multiple. Suppose you might have seen such drop down box, combo box. Have you seen it? Here there is an arrow, and when you click on it, it shows you one drop down list. Yes or no? And here
Yes.
also you can
Yes.
do typing. You can type also something over here. So actually it is derived from a text box class and a list box class. There is one class called list box, correct? And there is a class called text box. And from both of these two classes, a new class is created called as a combo box. So you can say combo, why? Because combination box. So it's a combination of a text box and a list box. So it's the best example of multiple, right? Or in simple terms, like you're creating a mark sheet. So your internal marks and the external marks. So this class A is internal marks, class B is external, and from both then what is generated? Mark sheet is created. Clear? Multi-level inheritance. Multi-level means when one child class is derived from already derived class. It's called as an intermediate superclass. Getting? Intermediate superclass you can call it as. So one child class derived from already child means its parent is already a child of someone. So you can say grandparent and grandchild. Like the C is a grandchild and A is a grandparent. Is everything of A and B going to flow to C? Clear? A and B, will it flow everything to C? Correct? Right?
Yes.
Yes.
So information of A, information of B, everything will come in C. Okay. Then coming to hierarchical inheritance. Hierarchical inheritance means when many child class are derived from one common parent class. This happens in our brothers and sisters, siblings. Getting? So B, C and D, they all are siblings. They all have got the characteristics of the common parent, but they have their own features also. D is having its extra quality, C is having different quality, B. But they have some common quality which has come from their common parent. This is common in our day-to-day life. Getting? Like we are also part of some hierarchy. What do you say? Clear? We also belong to some hierarchy. Each and every animal is also part of that hierarchy. Getting? Everything which we see in the surrounding is a part of hierarchy. Or can I say the entire information of the universe is in a hierarchical form? Right or no? Clear? Like if I take animal, so in that animal only again we'll have mammals, then birds and so many things. Clear? In that also further category. Right? Or I take vehicle. So vehicle only in that two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler going on. So many child class but derived from one common parent class is called hierarchy. And hybrid inheritance meaning when there are more than one type of inheritance involved. More than one type of this four inheritance involved. Then it is hybrid. Like here upside if you see so it is a hierarchy, below side if you see so it is multiple. Getting or no? If I combine this A, B, C and this C is attached below, so from this part if you see it is multiple, upper side if you see it is hierarchical, therefore it is hybrid. Actually this is a diamond situation, and C++ always faces this diamond problem, and to overcome that diamond problem Java didn't give only this situation, but in Python don't worry. Clear? Python has internally solved diamond problem, you don't worry about it.